Welcome back from the ad break. You are still watching Prime Life. Now, today we are commemorating World No Tobacco Day. Now, we are joined by wellness expert Ronald Abvajee, who will be shedding light onto the significance of World No Tobacco Day, which is going to be on the 31st of May. Now, the world turns its attention to the negative effects of tobacco use and the importance of quitting. Now, Ronald will guide us through this conversation, offering practical tips on how we can join fights against tobacco addiction and improve our health and well-being. After all, it is a beautiful Wellness Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining us on Prime Life.
Always a pleasure.
Now let's jump straight into it. What are the top 3 health risks that are associated with tobacco use?
Well, let's categorize those health risks. And when we talk about tobacco use, we're talking here about cigarettes. We're talking here about e-cigarettes or vapes, and of course shisha. Right, or bubbly.
Hubbly bubbly, yes.
Yeah, there are so many people that are addicted to that. But the 3 categorization of risks are: 1 is health risks. So we know that, and this is the key risk that we have to look at, is the tiers of health risks. So 1, when you look at it from a cancer perspective, did you know that smoking is associated in South Africa with a 58% leading cause of lung cancer? Never mind mouth cancer, throat cancer, etc. And that's due to the fact that it contains over 7,000 chemicals, of which 69 are known to be carcinogens or absolutely toxic to health. The second thing is respiratory disease, so chronic COPD, chronic obstruction pulmonary disease, asthma and others as well, but really debilitating. And then of course you look at physically, in every facet of your health and well-being, it really does become something that is so addictive that it causes addiction and nuance that impacts your mental health as well. So when we look at those 3 spheres of health impact, it's scary.
That's very scary. Now, a lot of smokers, they struggle with the physical and psychological addiction to nicotine. What makes it so difficult and challenging to quit nicotine?
Well, number 1 is there's a physical response to it. So nicotine is an addictive substance. So there's an addictive response to it. 1 is smoking stimulates areas in the brain that releases the reward center, stimulates the reward center of the brain, and that is associated with addiction. So 1 becomes 2, becomes 3, and it keeps on stacking. The second thing is it's a behavioral issue. It's a habit. And when you look at behaviors and habits, it's to do with, I'm just used to smoking after I have a coffee, or before a meal, or after a meal, or I need to do it in the morning just to, de-stress and manage my day, so to speak. But the last thing is to do with the fact that it is absolutely dependent, and it creates dependency by individuals. And the habit is absolutely scary, but also, more often than not, it's associated with a 3rd tier of just a way to cope with emotional distress and of course anxiety and other things. I don't know about you, but I can really think of other things to do besides smoking, because 1 is it smells atrocious. It stinks. I don't care, it stinks. Number 2 is it is something that is pungent onto your clothing, absolutely toxic for yourself and for others around you. So it boils down to how much care you're actually showing for others versus how do you we often speak about loving yourself. And when you look at those 3 categorizations of health, behavioral, and of course emotional, I mean, it's a trifecta for why people do this.
Everybody's saying louder, louder, louder for everybody at the back to hear because of what you just said. But anyway, you spoke about the effect that it has on people around you. Let's speak about secondhand smoking and the effect that it can have on, people in general, but also children especially, and pregnant women.
So secondhand smoke doesn't mean it's filtered. It just means it's less concentrated, but still contains a lot of those toxins and those chemicals from the primary smoker. So as you blow the smoke out, secondhand smoke is, if I can smell it, it impacts me. So when you're looking at adults, it could increase your risk of asthma or aggravate it. Cancer, yes, especially when you look at nasal cancers, and of course lung cancers, not as pronounced as 58%, but it does increase your risk. Then you're looking at children. You get sudden infant disease, SIDS, that is initiated and caused by secondhand smoke. Mothers that smoke and or surrounded by that, you can kill your infant, premature birth, increased risk of asthma once the child is born, etc. So it does put the child at a massive disadvantage from opportunity of optimizing their health to thrive, that because of you and being surrounding them with secondhand smoke, you literally are impacting the opportunity to thrive.
Mm. I think smoking is so common that we are not actually realizing the effects of it. Like it has become a secondhand thing, like fashion of some sort. You know, people do it so much that you don't actually think of the health risks associated with smoking itself, which is actually very sad. But let's talk about what role can awareness campaigns like World No Tobacco Day play in reducing tobacco use and its associated health risks.
A massive role. I mean, but also we become desensitized to what the awareness is, because the first thing that anyone would say to that question, it creates awareness. So what?
Mm.
Have you seen those cigarette boxes? We have images and pictures internationally. Tobacco's going to kill you. Tobacco's
Mm.
dangerous. What do people say? Ah, I can die if I walk in the road and get bumped by a bus.
Mm.
Yes, you could. But this is like a slow punch and a slow death. It doesn't impact you, it impacts others. And it's just about a habit that you need to mitigate and manage. So number one is education. Number two is bring in experiential opportunities. One of them is teach you about a heart rate. It'll take 2 minutes.
Mm.
Then let you do an exercise. You measure your heart rate. Your heart rate will increase. I then let you rest, do the same exercise when you measure your heart rate. I then give you a straw. And I say, put that straw in your mouth and do the same exercise. Before that time is done of doing this exercise again, you would find that you are hot and sweaty, there's a pain in your throat, the chest is a bit tighter, your heart rate is beating through the roof, and that is what smoking is doing to your body. But you are like, one day is one day. But what if your one day is today and you're not going to have the opportunity to see your grandkids? What if you're not going to have the opportunity to walk your child down the aisle? What if you're not going to have the opportunity,
Mm.
to see a smile on your spouse's face?
Mm.
And at the end of the day is, I understand that people get addicted. I understand this is a massive economic driver. But do you know that when you look at increasing sin taxes by 10%, it has been shown to have a 6 to 7% decrease in smoking? But the other thing that concerns me more often than not is the fact of e-cigarettes and of hubblies.
Mm.
And that for me is also quite scary, especially with the younger generation.
Mm. We will get that, get into that after the specific video that we're going to be playing. It's by Ingrid Bain from South African Tobacco Free Youth Forum on vaping. So let's take a look at that and we'll continue the discussion after.
There's a perception that vaping is safer than smoking cigarettes, but I think the truth of the matter is harm is harm at the end of the day. As much as there's a perception that smoking vapes is less harmful than smoking traditional cigarettes, there are health implications that come with consuming these products. And just because cigarettes are lit up with a match and because cigarettes have 7,000 chemicals, it doesn't actually mean that cigarettes are far more dangerous than vapes. Vapes are just as harmful as cigarettes. The amount of aerosol that is absorbed in the body when you smoke these products is also leads to different forms of diseases like heart disease as well as cardiovascular diseases, also including risks to cancer as well. So they are quite dangerous and should not be considered as substances that are less harmful than traditional cigarettes.
The thing is about this, right? When you look at the context of smoking, I mean, you're absolutely right. It becomes topics that become taboo because when we look at things like, if you look at the industry right now, the reality of, for lack of a better phrase, weed shops or cannabis stores, they're opening up everywhere. And they're selling products that really are perceived and sold as health benefits. But the reality is that as you're smoking anything, you are still bringing in toxins. And the same principle applies to what Ingrid spoke about regarding vaping, e-cigarettes, and of course hookah pipes, and of course traditional cigarette smoking.
Mm. Can we talk about your e-cigarettes, vaping, hubbly bubblies that we were spoken about? How? Because there's a thing we always hear that it's worse than smoking itself. Is that true? What are the health risks associated to them?
So number one is they all have health risks. They're just positioned differently.
Okay.
So when you look at e-cigarettes or vaping, it is and with hubbly bubblies, the one thing that concerns me is that it's a lot more frequent, more often than not, than cigarette smoking. The second thing is what is vaping? It's a combustible tobacco. It's still got nicotine in it, and it's combustible, so there's still heat. And there's not enough science or research to prove what the long-term impacts are. But the guarantee is that it is impacting your health, not negotiable. From a cardiovascular perspective, increasing your risk of cardiovascular disease, increasing your risk of respiratory disease, and increasing your risk of cancers. So e-cigarettes essentially are sold as being cool, it's got flavor, when not, that thing is toxic, full stop. But the other thing that has become so common is, of course, shisha or hubbly bubblies. Now, I know people that smoke hubbly bubbly all the time. They literally have to have it in the morning and the evening. And, you know, when I'm with them and they smoke the hubbly, that is a choice that I make, right? But I refuse to be the primary consumer thereof. But because of the social engagement, interaction, just the connectivity, to be part of that. And if I look at what that does is, it is tobacco that is covered in molasses and flavor. So you still have flavoring toxins in both e-cigarettes and shisha. You still have tobacco. You still have the degree of toxins, and you still have impact on your health and on your lungs in particular, and your cardiovascular health. The addiction, the behavior, the emotional support thereof. Go to gym. You will get a behavior change. It'll become addictive in a healthy way, and you will, of course, deal with the behavior of it all.
And with vapes, we have those vapes that says no nicotine. It's just flavor. Are those also like bad for your health?
That's like telling me that low-fat yogurt is healthy.
But they don't have nicotine, do they?
But it's still tobacco. So at the end of the day, it's still toxins and tobacco. Your body is not meant to have that frequency or that quantity of toxins and chemicals inhaled. You are decreasing your lung capacity and so forth. And the reason I'm so passionate about this is because I remember my uncle, who I was close with, he had a hole in his neck because of smoking his whole life. And during cancer treatment, he still smoked. And I'll never forget what his wife told him. You don't actually love me. You don't actually love your kids because you are killing yourself with every puff.
That is so sad. That is so sad. You know, I think it brings us back to, you know, how people, I think I read a quote somewhere that said, we often say things like, I would die for my family, but would you actually live for them? And that reminds me for that. I mean, but okay, back to this. Some governments have implemented their legislation to restrict or tax some, you know, tobacco products in effort to reduce the consumption of it. Do you think these help, and do you think that such measures are effective in curbing the use of tobacco?
I mentioned earlier about the 10% increase in tax and the slight decrease in tobacco use because it's a financial pinch. My taking on it is quite simple. It's called a sin tax for a reason. It's sinful to your health. I'm not talking about an ethics issue, I'm talking about a health issue. You could argue with me, but it's a very big economy driver. Absolutely illicit economy as well. But if you look at taxing cigarettes from a policy perspective, cost perspective, you're looking from an awareness perspective and a societal perspective. It is just a habit that has gone out of control. And when you look at those habits and those reliances on that from a behavior perspective, my thinking is as follows. Tax the living beings out of it. Not 10%, 1,000%. Because the lagging impact on lifestyle, health, family, economy, etc., is compounded exponentially. That impacts individuals, families, communities, and countries. And when you normalize it, you are creating the next generation of youth. You are creating them to become addicted to this thing of vapes, of hubblies, and of cigarettes. And if that is the legacy we want to leave with our kids, shame on us.
Just to wrap up and conclude our conversation, what words or last words do you have just to, you know, commemorate World No Tobacco Day?
You know, I wish it was a lot more than just World No Tobacco Day. And I think that we become desensitized to what the impact and risk could be. Healthy lung, unhealthy lung. So my final word would be is, you know, we all have choices to make in life. And if this is your choice, there's no judgment to your choice. But when the consequence of that choice catches up to you, that's all on you. It will be too late when you could have stopped it a lot earlier.
Jazakallah so much for joining us, Ronald, and this has been an amazing conversation.
Absolute pleasure.
Viewers at home, this was an amazing conversation that we just had on World No Tobacco Day, and we are going to park it right here. So stay tuned for more right after this ad break.